Returning to our top story, some images that are giving stark perspective about the catastrophic damage in Mayfield, Kentucky. They show the town before and after the tornadoes came through. Governor Andy Beshear says that entire towns like Mayfield are gone. Well, tornadoes in the US during December are extremely rare, though not unheard of. Overall, about 1,000 are recorded annually, mostly in central US states along an area called Tornado Alley. The peak months are May and June, when dry, cold air from Canada moves south and meets warm, humid air coming north from the Gulf of Mexico. In winter, there normally isn't enough warm and humid air for tornadoes to thrive. But this time, spring-like temperatures fed the storms. The current La Niña weather pattern in the Pacific Ocean is responsible for some of this, but scientists expect warmer winters to become more common as the planet heats, and higher temperatures are already being blamed for shifting Tornado Alley east, potentially putting more people in the path of twisters. Tom Burke is chairman of Third Generation Environmentalism. It's an environmental and climate change think tank. He joins us now via Skype from London. Tom, good to have you with us. What do you make of the scale and the devastation of these storms in December, for heaven's sake?
Well, that's exactly as you said. This is not completely unprecedented, but the scale of this impacts are really quite unusual. And part of that, of course, is because, as you mentioned in your introduction, there seems to be a structural shift going on in the tornadoes. They seem to be moving, as you said, somewhat to the east, but there also seems to be these bigger clusters occurring. And of course, as you move to the east, you go into more populated areas of the United States, away from the center of the plains, and that makes the potential for them to damage the people is much greater. So I think we are seeing something going on. Whether this has something to do with climate change or not, I think has still got to be determined. But when you look at the pattern of extremes in fires across the United States, in droughts, in floods in the Mississippi Valley, what you're seeing is clearly connected in some way to a changing climate.
So, yeah, what's your feeling? As we said, there's the thought that the current La Niña weather pattern in the Pacific Ocean could be partly responsible for what happened. Is it to do with climate change?
Well, the La Niña pattern is an oscillation in the Pacific Ocean between where warmer water comes on the east or the west of the Pacific Ocean, and that brings with it changes around the globe, and that's a normal feature. That happens all the time. What I think the reason to think about climate change is what you're seeing is much greater variability. In other words, the extremes are more extreme. So it's not that you're seeing things that never happened before. You're seeing things that, when they happen, are much more violent. The change is much more violent than it was before. Well, if you think of the climate, in a sense, as an oscillating system, and what you do is you pump heat into that, energy into that system, then you'd expect the oscillations to increase. So that's why I think people suspect that there might be a climate change signal as part of this particular event, but we'll wait to see what the attribution science says. We know less about tornadoes than we do about some of the other weather phenomena, so it'll take a bit of time for us to come up with and be able to say how much more likely this was because of climate change.
Tom, if the weather is going to become more extreme, tornadoes happen out of tornado season. They're more violent when they do happen. What does all of this mean for the Federal Emergencies Management Agency and the Biden administration's infrastructure investment?
Well, I think it means three things. First of all, for FEMA, for the body that's responsible for dealing with these kind of emergencies in the United States, it means it has to have more resources. It's going to have a greater frequency of these kind of events. It needs to be much better capable of responding to them and responding to them very fast. I think that's the first thing. The second thing is the Biden administration has just committed a very large amount of money to investment in infrastructure. That infrastructure has to be done in a way that can cope with a changing climate. And that's a very important priority, so that you increase your ability to adapt to climate change so you can head off, if you like, some of these very dramatic damaging consequences. And then the third thing is the US has really got to overcome the kind of ideological objections to the science of climate change inside the Congress, so that it is in a better position to persuade the world to do much more about climate change. Otherwise, this will go on happening and getting worse.
Really good to talk to you, Tom. Many thanks indeed for being with us. Tom Burke there in London.
Pleasure.